que como pueden ver aquí, este es el fuerte aquí, Mchenry. Wow, está bonito por acá, para venir con la familia, con los amigos, precioso. Naturaleza, increíble. Pero aquí también este es un fuerte que ellos te han luchado con los de Inglaterra, ¿no? Hace años, 1840 y algo, creo ha sido más o menos los años que han luchado, ¿no? Aquí han luchado más o menos unos meses. Mira. Este es el sitio más popular aquí en Baltimore, Maryland.
Hey ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Fort McHenry National Monument and Historic Shrine. So these are sailors, flotillamen. They were commissioned by the government to watch over the Chesapeake Bay, filled with a bunch of little musket balls that they would have shot out of the cannon. Most likely, they would have been used in land battle directed at other soldiers. Then the point of this was that if you can get that rigging down, that ship can't go anywhere else. Right? And if that ship is stranded, so are those soldiers. So, balls that they would have then shot towards rigging, and I believe that hot shot was also discussed earlier. Solid shot. So this would have been what you would have most likely seen, just a straight cannonball that would have been shot out towards the ship, try to get it to not be movable. For here during the battle were castac. So it was actually found in Belgium under a bunch of mud. They dug it up and they gave it to us to show to all of you. Next, we're going to be going through some of the weapons. So quite often, what would happen is they'd board the ships, they try to cut rigging, like I said, try to destroy anything that was on the ships, and they would also use it in hand-to-hand combat. It was pretty brutal. Next was the cutlass. This is what you're probably most familiar to seeing, a pirate sword, right? So these would have been used, they would have been trained in, a lot of the flotillamen and sailors would have been trained in using the cutlass in drill, very similar to fencing, things like that. Pike that he is carrying, this was also used. So this primarily was used in the boarding process. They would not use this as much once they had actually boarded the ship. They would drop this down, drop it right in front like you're about to charge a bayonet. They'd drop it right down in front and they'd board the ship. Most likely, if you see this thing coming at you, you're going to want to get a little bit farther away. So this was a whole intimidation factor. Next, they would have carried something like this, a flintlock pistol. Now, this wasn't as common. A lot of the flotillamen were responsible for carrying their own weapons. And a lot of the, you might think that this would be useful, but you have to reload it. So after a certain amount of time, you get one shot. If you miss that shot, you're kind of, you're up the creek without a paddle. I mean, there's no really good way to go about that. They would have actually used them as clubs after firing. So then they would have also carried muskets. So these are Springfield muskets. They would have also carried Charlottevilles. However, we are carrying Springfields today. Very simple mechanism. It's smooth bore, meaning that there's no rifling on the inside. Oh. Not very far. The problem with these, like I said, is that they're smooth bore. We didn't start to see rifled until a little pre-Civil War time. So, this is literally a pipe. You can get one of these off Craigslist. They're horrible. It's a pipe. You shoot that musket ball out. What would happen is that because it is just a pipe, that musket ball is going to rattle all over that barrel. So whatever way it rattles last is whatever way it's going to come out. So sometimes you have them shooting this way, that way, up, down. It's a problem. So what they do is they'd fire in a line. You'd have hundreds of your best friends lined up, shoulder. you have a couple pieces here. You've got your barrel here, you've got your barrel bands which hold it intact, and then you have your lock. So your lock is comprised of a pan, a frizzen, and your hammer. Now your hammer would have held your flint. So when this fires, powder would be poured into your pan. There is a very, very small, can you try to show that? There is a very, very small touch hole in the side of the barrel. Powder would have been put through there and through the top of the pan so that when this flint hits that steel, it creates sparks, lighting that powder in the pan and then lighting the cartridge on the inside, sending that musket ball all the way down. It was very common for misfires. You have to account for open pan. So that first step, he's pulling this out. He's gonna open his pan. At this point, he's ready to load his powder into his pan. Handle, cartridge. So back here, he's got a cartridge box. You would have had all of your cartridges in here. You can see a couple there for you. But then pour the powder into his pan. Shut pan. He would shut the pan, bring it around, and then charge cartridge. He would then pour the rest of that powder and that musket ball down the barrel. Draw rammer. He would draw his rammer, ramp down cartridge. He would then ram that all the way down to the end of the barrel, making sure that it is nice and snug. Return rammer. He's then returned his rammer. You guys can notice, you can look at how his arms are positioned. What this signifies, that one arm shows that everyone is ready to go to the shoulder to get ready to fire. Shoulder, arms, make ready. He's pulling that out. You can notice how comical that is. Do that again. It's like a chicken wing. The whole point of this is a loud noise. So the whole point was to be he'd take aim and then he would fire. Now, upon firing, like I said, yeah, you got a dull flint there. So, yeah, there we go. So that would then light that powder and send that musket ball, hopefully, at your enemy. Load. So they're taking that cartridge out, they're biting the top of it off, they're spitting that paper out, and they're priming their weapon. They then are pouring, remember, they're pouring the rest of that powder down that barrel, drawing their rammers, sending the rest of that cartridge all the way down, making sure it's packed nice and tight. And there we are, so that now they're ready to fire. Shoulder, arms, make ready, take aim, fire! In cookies time, private load. Independent firing. So now they're gonna fire as independent. They're gonna fire as independent soldiers. So they're just gonna fire off as many rounds as they can in the quickest amount of time. So after a couple volley fires, after a couple firing by file, section fires, they then would go to this. This is to get as many, like I said, as many rounds out as possible. They want to hopefully hit something.
Pretty fast, huh?
Hopefully we'll get no miss. How many rounds? Spoke too soon. So he had a misfire. Like I said, that was very common. It could have happened for a couple of reasons. One, his flint could be way too dull, creating no spark at all. Or he could have had a flash in the pan. And what that means is that that touch hole that connects that pan to that barrel where that cartridge is, misfire again. Could have been clogged and not have gone off. And they would have been used to clean out your pan in battle. So you would have made sure that that touch hole is nice. Turn to the shoulder, Cordell. Break ranks, march! That concludes our talk with our musket demonstration. Thank you so much for coming. We'll be here on the water battery if you have any other questions for us. I highly recommend you check out the next talk down at the visitor center, down on the mat at 11:15. Yeah, right now, 11:15. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, War of the Chesapeake. Thank you very much.
As well as Washington too, when we talk about them going into D.C. Okay. Well, the War of 1812 pretty much starts because things are going on, with the British that we're just not happy with. And even though we signed peace accords with them after our revolution, we really don't see them leaving us alone. We're kind of an embarrassment. We're the first colony they ever lost, and so they continue to pick on us. All right. They also see our economy, especially after the Louisiana Purchase. Now we have all this beautiful territory from sea to shining sea. If our economy gets cranking, there's no way they're going to be able to compete with us. So we need to keep you down as long as we can. All right. And they do that firstly by stopping our ships on the high seas and taking our sailors. We have to remember that the sun never sets on the British Empire, right? They need a vast navy to protect those interests around the world, and they need sailors for that navy, and they're involved in wars all over the place. So what better place to get sailors than our merchant fleet? So they're stopping our merchant fleet, they're taking our sailors, all right? Sometimes they're rerouting our commerce. Say if a ship leaves Baltimore with a load of flour bound for France, and they're picked up by the English, they're going to go, well, sir, you can certainly take your flour to France, but before that, you're going to have to go to Portsmouth and pay a nice duty on that to continue away. This country's growing. All right, we're going to need all of North America, just not this down here. All right? All right? But you did. You have people like John C. Calhoun of South Carolina, Henry Clay of Kentucky, Tangier Island, and they're going to set up pretty much their headquarters for the Chesapeake down there. They're going to build a small fort called Fort Albion, and then getting in because of the defenses and because of the river that surrounds St. Michael's is very difficult to navigate. They clean out 2 warehouses there and burn a couple of farms. They go on up to Fredericktown that the Americans are putting up a fight. And with 2 small gun batteries, they actually defend Haverty Place. Then they come back down the western side of the bay, and they're going to pull up right out here in the river, all right, later on that summer, around the end of August. People in Baltimore freak out. They're here. What are they going to do? They can come up here and look out and they can see all the ships and a big Union Jack hanging up the side of the boat. People actually start to panic. People actually start to leave Baltimore because they are pretty sure that they're going to invade. Now Coburn, his instructions are to come into the Chesapeake Bay and wreak havoc and to take soundings and report to Coburn. We don't know. We couldn't really see the fort, so we did take a few notes, but you can't really see what they're doing up there. And they wouldn't let us out of the boat when we got to Baltimore, so we were unable to walk around and talk to people. All right, so Coburn chooses not to invade Baltimore. Alexander Cochrane is going to come into the bay, and after a little time on Tangier Island, what's the first place they're going to go?
White House.
Where's the White House? In Washington, D.C., that's right, okay? So that's the first place they want to go because it's a little tit for tat, because the year before, we had burned York, Bladensburg, which was not a bright and shining time for our military. Ladies and gentlemen, the British deployed for the first time these concrete rockets, okay? We have one of them off the battery today, I can show you later, but these rockets are screaming over the heads of the militiamen. And many of the militiamen, we have to understand that they're just good farming folk. They don't get out a lot. Element, all right, with a few pieces of artillery, but they're unable to continue because the people who were supplying them with shot and powder run away. See, they're going to arrive out here at the mouth of the river and land in North Point the second week in September. The Army is going to march around the north side of town to take the town. The fleet is going to come in here and bomb Fort McHenry, try to get around the fort, and idea being the Army will come into town, we'll come in and we will meet downtown with each other, okay? Now, the British run against some bad luck while they're here, all right? The first thing is, it's 103 degrees. It's muggy, all right? It's like rainy, foggy. These guys are fresh from the fields of France and they're marching in full wool uniforms. All right? Water is hard to come by. Many of them, you just fall out from heat exhaustion. Have today. Thank you for coming. If you guys have any questions, I'll be glad to field any questions that you might